Thank you for joining us tonight for our first edition of Hunker Down and Huddle Up. We are very excited to have you here tonight. So I have a few housekeeping items before I turn it over to our moderator. If you can, please make sure to put your computer on speaker view. There's a button in the top right corner to make that happen. We do ask that you remain muted throughout. We will have the chat feature open. So we definitely want everyone to be able to chat with each other during the first part of the program. And then the second part of the program, the chat will be open for y'all to ask questions directly to David. So with that, I would love for everyone to go and put in the chat their name, their grad year, if you're a UGA graduate, and where you're tuning in from this evening. With that, I do want to introduce our wonderful moderator for this evening. Brian Dill is a double dog with a degree in political science and also an MBA from UGA. He is the president of our UGA Alumni Association. He is an avid dog fan and a former Redcoat, and we're very excited to have him here with us tonight. Brian will lead a discussion with David for about 30 minutes or so. And then afterwards, there will be time for you to submit your questions. So with that, Brian, take it away.
Thank you, Francis, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our first Hunker Down and Huddle Up series. We're very glad that you were able to make it tonight. After having watched Georgia beat Auburn, this is a great place to be. Great to be a dog on a Sunday evening. With us today, we have David Greene. It really needs no introduction. One of the all-time winningest dogs. Greene played as quarterback for the University of Georgia from 2001 to 2005. The most successful quarterback in NCAA history, 42 wins in 4 years, eclipsing a young man that played for the University of Tennessee, but we won't mention him. David holds a BBA in risk management and insurance from the University of Georgia and is currently a partner at Sterling Seacrest Partners, still in the Atlanta area, and a member of the National Football League from 2005 to 2008. So David, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Appreciate you being with us.
Well, Brian, good to be here, buddy. I tell you, I think the timing was spot on after that game last night. I know everybody's muted. Can you give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed watching that game? Wasn't that fun?
Awesome. Well, let's dive right in. In fact, just looking back to the game, I think a lot of folks tuned in, and if you were able to be there in person, a little bit awkward, only having 20,000 folks in the stands. But the walk home from Blackshear, Georgia, kid's nickname's the mailman. He certainly delivered. 17 of 28, 240 yards passing. Stetson Bennett showed up and showed out. Tell me your thoughts on Stetson and really the performance last night.
Yeah, well, the one thing that sticks out to me with Stetson is he's steady and he's got confidence. And one thing you want when you got a lot of really talented players on your team, really at Georgia, you just need a quarterback back there that's just kind of distributing the football, and when it's time to make a play, you make the play. But when you got a great defense, you know, you don't have to go out there and throw for 500 yards every game. All you got to do is sometimes we hand it off, and when it's 3rd and 5, you just got to make the play. And ever since Stetson has stepped in at Arkansas, I mean, you can see not only his confidence, but how the confidence of the team has changed. It looked totally different those first 6 series with Dwan, and I'm certainly not putting the blame on Dwan. The whole team really kind of played bad, at least offensively, against Arkansas. But as soon as we started moving that football, you could see everybody in all 3 phases of the game. Their confidence just went through the roof. So really pleased with the way and excited with the way Stetson is playing. Right now, it seems like this team, I mean, took some huge strides from week 1 to week 2. I don't think anybody expected things to go the way they did. I think we were hopeful, but that was one of the best Georgia performances in all 3 phases of the game that really I've seen since the national championship, or the team that went to the national championship.
Well, you know, we have a new offensive coordinator in Todd Monken. What I saw last night looks like it almost kind of created an offense around what he had in Stetson and kind of what he thought he might need in those backup quarterbacks. Your thoughts on kind of building an offense around the personnel that you have, defense aside, which is lights out, but looks like we showed up in that regard last night, playing that game plan based on what we had on the field.
Yeah, and I think the one thing, all Georgia fans love is to see the running game going. And I tell you, that offensive line played huge. I can't remember a game of that magnitude where the offensive line was getting as much push as they were last night. And those backs were running hard. The one thing I've been saying for quite some time is I've been concerned, Brian, with the receiving core. Everybody knows Pickens is a big threat. I'm going, man, we need another guy out there that can stretch the field. And, man, Kyrus Jackson, holy cow. I mean, I've heard people say they thought he was going to have a breakout year. But I think he gave us a nice little sneak peek last night of what he's capable of doing. I mean, I think he's going to be a problem for defenses. And I'm just so glad we've got some other guys that are starting to step up out wide and make those plays. So Zeus ran hard. McIntosh ran hard. It was good to see Milton get some reps in there. He's a big old boy too. So, I went into this year a little concerned about our firepower on offense, to be honest with you. And after the game last night, I feel a lot better than I did, certainly, after the Arkansas game.
Well, let's touch briefly on the defense. I listened to Jeff Dancer on the way back from Athens this morning.
Right.
And of course, Jeff called our attention to the lowest point total from an Auburn offense since the middle 60s in terms of points scored. So they're definitely living up to the hype on the defensive side of the ball, and hopefully will keep us in games all the way through the season.
This defense is playing. I'll tell you this, I'm glad I didn't have to go up against that defense. I mean, they are flying around the field, tremendous athletes. Don't seem to be a whole lot of missed assignments. I mean, they're playing hard. Tyson Campbell last night had a tough matchup. That Williams at Auburn is a player. And, man, he stepped up to the challenge. It was good to see some of our guys making plays when they've had opportunities to get interceptions this year. We've created turnovers, and that was one of the things last year. We had a really good defense, but we weren't creating turnovers. Through 2 weeks, we've done that. And so, defense has been lights out. I think everybody kind of knew going into this year we had some depth on defense, or we had a lot of returning starters. But the confidence that they're playing with right now, the way they're flying around the field. But I do got to say this, Richard LeCount, that hit last night, how else is he supposed to make that tackle without? And look, I'm all for protecting players, but that was not targeting. I thought he led with his shoulder to begin with. I just don't know how, and he's one of our best players on defense. I don't know what he's supposed to do other than just let him catch the ball and don't touch him, maybe. And that's the only way to be able to stay in the game. They got to figure something out with that rule. But other than that, man, defense couldn't be happier with the way those guys are playing.
Absolutely. We've got a couple polls here for the folks that have joined us. We're going to throw one up for the first poll. I think the question was when they signed on, what game are you most looking forward to? And Francis and Allie, I think if we got that poll up, if you want to vote on what we have left, I think a lot of folks are pointing to that October 17th matchup in Tuscaloosa, maybe the world's largest outdoor recreational event. You can't call it cocktail party anymore. May come up. So I'm going to go with that October 17th matchup. I mean, we've got to take care of business next week, David, but looks like that's going to be the one everybody's circling.
I tell you, this might be my most fun year watching football. When you look as fans, we are not getting cheated this year. When you see we got Tennessee, who's won 8 straight, good football team. Alabama, Kentucky is not the Kentucky we're used to. I mean, they're good. You got the Gators. We know what they're capable of. And if I had to pick, let's say the one I'm most interested in, I think it's Florida, because that's the one that Florida thinks they've got it this year. They think they this year. And that Kyle Trask is no doubt having a big year. I like our defense, though. Kirby's going to have them boys ready to go. And the key, and it's really a key with every team in the SEC this year, is how healthy can you stay, through this schedule? Because you're used to, 3-4 cupcake games in the middle of all this, and you don't have it this year. So as a fan base, we're getting our money's worth this year.
No doubt. Absolutely. It's, I think Kirby said early on, you get a star. If you get an asterisk by this season, it's because you played the toughest schedule that you're ever going to play, no doubt. Let's change gears. We've got Tennessee coming in. It's 3:30 CBS game. There was a kid out of Gwinnett County in 2001, freshman. You start off that year, and then we head to Knoxville. Mark Rick's first year as a head coach. I think the question that we'll pose for the folks that are watching that put in the chat box is, where were you when that play occurred? My wife is 7.5 months pregnant with our one and only son. We are 4 rows from the top of Neyland Stadium on the Riverside. Every time Georgia did something good and you made a good pass, my wife would cheer, and the Georgia fan in front of us would stand up and make sure she wasn't having a baby. And so it was an exciting game. And then they run the ball back, that big running play. We're thinking the game's over, but there's nowhere to go. We're not going to go anywhere fast. But walk us through that season, and really more importantly, just kind of walk us through your thoughts on, walking into Neyland Stadium with the sea of orange and how that game played out for you.
Well, I'll say this, that year I think Tennessee was ranked 4 in the country. They had Albert Hainsworth. They had Big John Henderson with their 2 D tackles. My first away road game in the SEC. And I think we were ranked 13. They were ranked 4. They were supposed to win. We were playing, pretty good that whole day. I mean, we had a pretty good game plan. We'd made some big plays. We were on top. I remember it was in the fourth quarter. All we really needed to do was get a first down, and really the game was going to be over. We go 3 and out. We run the ball 3 times up the middle. We get stuffed. They burn their timeouts. We punt to them. They do a screen pass. And Brian, I'm going to tell you, when they scored, that was the loudest I've ever heard any stadium of anywhere. And college, pro, you name it, that was the only time in my career the ground was actually shaking. And the ground was shaking in Neyland Stadium. But for whatever reason, as an athlete, you can't zoom out like you can as a fan and go, oh my gosh, and get all emotional and we lost here, this same old Georgia team. You can't do that kind of stuff. You got to stay in the game and keep competing. And when they did that squib kick, I never know why they did that. We got the ball on like the 40-yard line. First play, and we just played it out. I mean, at that time, you really can't. You just got to stay in the moment and compete. We called Freedom Top, which is 4 verticals. They were more in a prevent defense, and Freedom Top is Freedom's the protection, and Top is tailback option. And we put Damian Gary at tailback. If y'all remember, a lot of Georgia fans remember Damian Gary. You couldn't 2-hand touch him in an elevator. That guy was quick. And if it was man coverage, he would break out. He had an option. He could go out or in. Or if it was zone coverage, he could hook it up. Well, the first play, boom, they go zone coverage. He hooks it up, gets about 10 yards. We're already past midfield at this point. We had this play called Smoke, and that was the signal for it. It was a rollout to the right, and it was a little smash concept where we had a hitch and a flag behind it. It wasn't there, and Coach Rick always said, if it's not there, just throw it away because you got 4 down. You get 4 downs to get, obviously, 10 yards. Can't take a sack in this scenario, so we burned that one. Next play, 560 switch. 560 is protection. We can't block 4 weak. So if we end up being hot, Randy McMichael is my hot receiver. But they're in prevent. I couldn't tell if it was 2 deep or 3 deep. But at this point in the game, who gives a crap? Make a play, right? So I just throw it in there, and Randy McMichael I still don't know how he caught it because I don't think he could see it. I didn't see it. I'm just throwing it, and we jammed it in there. So now we're down about 35-yard line. Then we call us play pass 44 Tennessee, where we get Randy coming up and across in front of the safety's face down to the fullback. So my read was Randy 1, Veron Haynes 2 in the flat, and Randy popped up and wide up again. So we're down on like the 10-yard line now with 10 seconds left. We burn our timeout. And one thing that we knew going into that game, Tennessee had shown quarters coverage in the red zone. Quarters coverage meaning the corner's got a quarter of the field, the strong safety has a quarter, free safety has a quarter, another corner. So it's split up into quarters. And so we called that pass 44 Tennessee or pass 44 Haynes. And all we do is that fullback all game would go up and he would break to the left. And that's all that middle linebacker had ever seen is, fullback goes up, breaks to the left. So on pass 44 Haynes, we do that same play action. And instead of breaking to the left, he just goes right down the middle. And in quarters coverage, the middle of the field's open. And if the Mike linebacker doesn't bite on it, it's wide open. And so Coach Rick told me, he said, look, Greene, it's, we're on run pass 44 Haynes. If it's one safety, throw it out, throw it away. If it's two safeties, he'll be wide open. And sure enough, he was wide open, and the rest was history. Obviously, Larry's call is what made that play famous. But I think for a lot of Georgia fans, it was kind of like it was a new era of Georgia football. We had really it had been 20 years since I think we'd won in that stadium, and it was kind of showing that this program's going in a different direction now.
Well, and in that interview, post-game interview, Coach Rick talked about, attempting to take the lid off the program, and you guys proceeded to not only do that year, but next year follow up with the SEC championship. We talk a lot of, my son's a kicker, and that's a quirk in and of itself in terms of goggles and glasses and things. But think back to that group of guys you were with. And Veron being a personality, but who was the quirky person on your team? Was there somebody that kind of stood out that was all over the place and or just fun to be around, that type of thing?
That was kind of required to be on our team. It was more like it wasn't quirky. Look, I remember Van Gorder said one time, he was our D coordinator. Yeah, he would try to recruit guys that were he wasn't looking for choir boys. He was looking for guys that were just about to be the guys to get arrested, you know what I mean, but not quite. The guys that could stay out of trouble. He one of the guys that were, tough and mean and want to hit and play hard. And so, there was a lot of personality on the team. I don't know if I can name just one. Randy McMichael, certainly. Our whole tight end group was pretty entertaining in themselves, but I would probably say 95% of our guys were pretty entertaining.
Well, you had the right chemistry, no doubt.
Right.
We talk about the hobnail boot, and that goes down in Georgia history. We're going to throw a second poll up and ask folks to kind of give us their best Larry Munson call of all time, and maybe see if we can see what comes up there. There we go. Got 4 good ones to choose from. I think, folks, if you had internet connection back in 2001, you were trying to look up what a hobnail boot actually was, for sure. That look at the sugar falling out of the sky, 1982, comes back shades of last night for sure.
Well, the part that was so fun, Brian, about really all those calls is it was just so genuine and natural, for Larry. I mean, he wasn't one to say, hey, next week, if I get in this situation, this is what I'm going to say. And in fact, I actually think after the Tennessee game, we were on a bus, and I think he looked at Lauren Smith and said, Lauren, I think I said something I shouldn't have said, and I don't remember what it was. But he felt like, he had said something, gotten out of line. But that's what made him so great, is he would, what is a hobnail boot? I've never heard anybody mention that. Certainly before that. But most people after they heard, they're going, they're Googling, what is a hobnail boot? But Larry's one of a kind now. He was certainly something else. I think everybody on there is just being kind because I'm on the call today with that one. But I think every one of those were really, really good. My God, a freshman, when you see Herschel running over Bill Bates, who was an All-American, that was a good one. Then obviously Run, Lindsey, Run. I mean, that's as good as it gets too. Because if we don't win that game, do we even play in the national championship that year if we lose to Florida?
Right. No. Awesome. Well, we're going to start taking some questions from the audience. And so at this time, the chat feature is going to transition from a group chat over to questions, and then we'll get those to David and start firing away some Q&A here. So let's see if we can't transition that. All right. The first question coming in, from a standpoint of just the personnel and, the kids we have today, let's talk a little bit about it's the safety from the COVID standpoint. And I think a lot of folks know the name Ron Corson, but are not familiar with kind of the background. But we have a tremendous sports medicine director and by the name of Ron Corson. Just talk about your experience with Ron, and then really what they've been able to create in terms of a safe environment from the COVID standpoint.
Yeah, well, I'll say this, Ron Corson is really as good as it gets, and there's probably not a more respected team doctor in the country than Ron. Even when I was playing in the early 2000s, concussions were not near as big of, I shouldn't say it wasn't a big deal. There wasn't as much known about them. And it wasn't such a hot topic in sports, back in those days. And I know Ron was kind of a trendsetter back in the early 2000s. We were doing baseline testing and things of that nature. He's certainly on the cutting edge of all that, and has been that way really in all phases. He's certainly, when it comes to leadership on a national level, from team sports, team physician or team doctors, he's always been on a national level kind of the guy that's looked to and respected the most. Now, as far as the COVID, I think you had mentioned, Brian, he's kind of been leading the way with the SEC on different protocols and that kind of deal. And man, what a tall task this year. I mean, this is certainly new for everybody. I don't think anybody has a magic wand. And we already see, watching NFL games today, the Patriots were supposed to play today, and I got, moved to tomorrow. I know Cam Newton, and we got some players, for the Titans as well that are testing positive. So, what Ron Corson, look at, I'm not exactly a tremendous athlete, and I started for 4 years at the University of Georgia, and he was responsible for keeping me upright and making sure I could play. I was always grateful for Ron and his staff. They certainly make sure that they take care of those kids, because you talk about long hours. They're waking up in the morning. They're getting to the facility at 5 a.m. They're there all day, and they're there all night, because you got guys getting done with their meetings and getting more treatment at night. If he got paid by the hour, he would be one wealthy man. I can promise you that.
Awesome. Yeah, I have no doubt about that. Teresa Blakely wants to know, I think they actually had that on the call-in show this morning about Stetson starting next week. Have we removed all doubt about who's going to be the go-to from this point forward until something changes?
Well, I think there's no question. If Kirby made a change at this point, I think he would be beyond crazy the way things are going. He can't really play any better than the way he's played, and the team around him couldn't play probably any better than the way he's been playing. There's no question. Stetson has natural leadership, moxie to him that you can't really teach. I think most Georgia fans watch the game and can tell that when this guy's on the field, he's in control and he's got a quiet confidence about him that you need at that position. You want your quarterback to have confidence that he truly believes that he's the guy and that he can make the plays and we can win football games when he's in. And I think you can tell by watching him, he's got a tremendous amount of confidence. And the other thing I love about him is the kid's hungry. He's grown up, he's wanted to play at Georgia. He's wanted to be the guy. He's got the opportunity, and he's not making it bigger than what it is. I think he's just truly seizing the moment, and he's trying to take it and run with it. And you definitely want a guy behind center that wants to be there, that's all in. And as of right now, through a game and a half, he's playing about as well at that position as we could ask for.
Yes, sir. I mean, it's just the way he's approached the situation and stepped up and answered the bell. That's a lot to be admired. Lee Zell, who's on our alumni board of directors, asked the question on, a night game situation, particularly at the home game. 7:30 game, you go through workouts in the morning. What's that schedule look like? What are you guys doing all day long, waiting on the kickoff to start?
Yeah, so I know fans love the night games. As a player, I hated them. You get up in the morning, you certainly have like a team breakfast, you have meetings, and then you go back and you really watch other teams play throughout the day. At least that's the way we would do it. And then if it's a 7:30 game, probably by 2-3 o'clock, we stayed at Lake Lanier Islands. Back when I was playing, we would bus over. We'd start getting treatment, start getting ready for the game. Then you're over at the stadium at 5:30 or so. It's a long day. As a player, I think the perfect time to play, in my opinion, was that 3:30 game. That way, you get up, you get moving, you're kind of getting ready to go. Playing that night game's tough because it's a lot of time and that anxious energy that you have all day as well. Just, knowing it's about to go down, your body's telling you, you're ready to play and you're anxious to get going. But that 7:30 kick, I know the fans love it as a player. It can be pretty exhausting, especially when you're on the road. Because back when I played too, the worst was Ole Miss, because if you played Ole Miss, you would have to drive back from Oxford to Memphis, fly from Memphis to Atlanta, and then bus over from Atlanta to Athens, all after you just played an SEC football game. And so, you already felt like you've been in a car wreck. And then you got to hop on the plane, and there's not a soul on the team that fits well in a commercial airplane. Excuse me. Then you got to get on a bus and ride all the way back and get in at like 4 a.m. Now, they've done a better job now. Now they fly in and out directly to Athens. But back when I played, it was not that way.
Phil Wilkins, a good friend of ours from Carrollton, asked a question: how has social media changed the recruiting process?
Well, I think I say this: I'm glad I played when I did. I think this day and time, kids are more interested about promoting themselves for the most part. And this is kind of obviously a pretty broad statement. You can't lump all kids into this. But for the most part, they're just trying to figure out a way, how do I further my career? If I go to Georgia and I got an opportunity to get the exposure, play at the next level in NFL, great. If I get there and I don't win a starting job, I want to be able to transfer out so I can get exposure somewhere and get to the next level. I think when it used to be, where do you really want to go? Where do you want to graduate from? Where do you want to have a degree? What school do you want to be all in on and say, I've got pride in this school. I want my kids and my grandkids to graduate from this university. But it just doesn't seem to be that way as much anymore. And I think social media, just the whole promoting myself kind of deal has gotten just way out of hand. I kind of like the old school days when a coach walks in your house and says, why should I offer you a scholarship? And put it on a player because, to earn it, versus a lot of these coaches feeling like they got to go and, beg and plead these kids to come to the university.
There's a young lady in my house that asked a question. Her name's Carmen. She says, hi, David. Thank you for being here and for all you did for the university. As Brian mentioned, our son is a kicker. He's a freshman at Dean College and will be their kicker, also doing lacrosse. Unfortunately, their season got canceled this year, but what advice would you give to a student athlete starting their collegiate journey?
Well, first thing I would say is get your degree. I know so many kids go to college on football scholarship or playing football, and that has been their dream since they were a kid. And I'm not saying to not keep that dream, certainly do. But Jerry Glanville, remember the old coach for the Falcons, said, "Man, the NFL stands for not for long. It's not the National Football League." An average career is 2.5, 3 years. Go somewhere, get a good degree, enjoy playing sports, enjoy the college atmosphere, enjoy what sports is about. The thing that I miss most about sports is not game day. It's not even the games that I played in Athens. I think it's the relationships that you make. There's something special of being a part of a team, being in the locker room, going through tough times together, going through good times together. That's kind of what builds those bonds in collegiate sports. I know so many people, football is a little bit of a dying game at the youth level now because people are afraid of injuries and that kind of deal. But I really think the lessons learned in sports far outweighs the negatives, in my opinion. And so, I mean, I've got my 12-year-old plays football, my 9-year-old does as well, and they love it. And I think another thing that I love about especially football is you get kids from all different backgrounds and all different situations that come together for a common goal. That was really cool. My time in Athens, Sean Jones, I went to basically an all white school. Sean Jones went to an all black school, and we go to Georgia at same time and form a tremendous relationship over through football. And there's not other times situations sometimes where you would get to form those bonds like that. And so I have some tremendous guys, some tremendous relationships that were formed through playing sports. And so I think the positives far outweigh the negatives in that sense.
That's great. Thank you. Joshua Watson would love to know what your most memorable moment at UGA was.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I would say, certainly winning the SEC championship was a huge moment. It had been 20 years since the university had been a part of that. Being a part of that team in 2002 was incredibly special. It was, we hit a stride late in that year where, from a confidence standpoint, we just weren't going to be denied. And we caught, after that win against Auburn, we just went on a run. I know we beat Tech, it was 50-something to 7. We beat Arkansas in the SEC championship 30-3, then went on to beat Florida State in the Sugar Bowl. That was a fun year. It was a fun team. Everybody on that team kind of balled in, and everybody was rowing in the same direction. Nobody, had their own agenda. Everybody kind of balled into their role on the team, and it just worked. And that 2002 team was so much fun. And we were so close to having a perfect season as well. We let that Florida game get away from us, but overall it was a good season.
Well, let's back up a bit. We had Auburn yesterday, and let me take you back to the Auburn game at Auburn in 2002. I paid for a seat. I'm in the upper deck. I didn't sit in it the entire second half. You guys kind of slowly started chipping away at that deficit. You fall on the ball in the end zone to score a touchdown too, and here we go. And Larry's imploring everybody to maintain composure and hunker down. But take us through that last drive that got us back to Atlanta.
Well, I'll tell you what was fun about that team is we certainly didn't play great all the time. But I think as fans probably know, we battled all the time, and we played hard all the time. We had a terrible first half on offense, and we did not play very well. Defense played phenomenal pretty much the entire game. Third quarter, we started making things happen. We started moving the ball. We started putting the ball in the end zone. And we just kept chipping away at it. And then, late in that game, we'd had a couple opportunities in the red zone to score. We couldn't take advantage of it. And then we get to that, that 4th and 15 when things were looking pretty grim. Michael Johnson had a huge game. I mean, he'd already had double-digit catches, and he had a hot hand. And Coach, whenever he called 70 X takeoff, that was his way of saying throw it to X. Normally it's 70 takeoff, which means you can throw to X or Z. When he says X takeoff, he's saying you're throwing it to Michael Johnson, no matter what. And I pumped to the right just to try to hold the free safety and make him flat foot, because we left our tight end in the block. So that free safety, as soon as we snapped it, he should have doubled Michael Johnson. But when I looked right, the free safety flat-footed, and I just tried to give Michael Johnson a jump ball, and he just went up and won it. And so I tell you, there's nothing cooler than being in an opposing stadium and just hearing it go. You could hear like a pin drop. That is a cool feeling.
Well, speaking of opposing stadiums, social media kind of amplifies the art of the smack talk. But who was the best smack talker on your team in terms of just getting somebody in somebody's head or riling them up or getting after them and changing the play?
I don't know, to be honest with you. Now, trust me, we had them. I just can't remember. I do remember, Kentucky had this guy, Sweet Pea Burns was a defensive end, and he was a big-time talker. And you'll probably remember Dennis Rowland, who had a pretty long career in the NFL. Dennis's first year as a freshman had to come in and play early on. And we were at a TV timeout. Y'all remember those TV timeouts are horrible. It just absolutely kills the momentum of a football game. And it was a TV timeout. And this Sweet Pea Burns at Kentucky he was jawing across the line, Greene, 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 just kept yelling my name. And so finally I walked over there and he said, Greene, you better get 66 out of the game. He's going to get you killed. But there was constantly jawing back and forth, and most of it was fun. But there were, certainly some teams were dirtier than others. But for the most part, it was all in good fun.
Well, it's Halloween month, and so everybody's kind of jumps into superstitions. I have so many superstitions in terms of game day, game week, what to wear, what to eat. If something doesn't go right, then I write that down and never do it again, during the season. But what was some of yours kind of coming through school and, washing a hat, not washing your hair? What kind of stood out to you that you had to do as long as you were winning?
Yeah. When I was in high school, I think I went through a whole season and didn't, I think I didn't even wash a pair of socks, like my game day socks, which is unbelievably bad. But that was high school. I think those socks were standing up in my locker by the end of the season. They were probably they were in bad shape. I used to be really superstitious, honestly, as a player. Not as much now, but I do sometimes while watching a game. If sometimes the team's playing good, when I was on the way home and just listening to it on the radio, and then I get home and start watching and they play bad, I feel like I almost need to turn it off, that I'm the problem. You know what I mean? Isn't it funny how we do that when we're pulling so hard for our teams to win?
Well, talk about your family. I know you have the children, they're kind of coming into football. And so what's life like now for the Greenes?
It's busy, buddy. I'm telling you, I'm shocked y'all haven't heard them yet. Veronica is UGA grad. She was a real estate major in Terry. And so we got married in 2006. We actually started dating in high school at South Gwinnett. We got 4 kids. We've got Jordan, who's 12-year-old boy, is a lefty quarterback, believe it or not, over at Hebron Christian Academy in Decula. I got a 9-year-old that's over at Hebron, plays football over at Grayson's youth program, and man, they've got a good little team. They've had got a great coach and a great teammates. They've had a good glue of kids for some time now, and I tell you, it's so much fun watching watching their kids go out there and compete. It's a lot of fun. And then we've got a 3-year-old boy, Brooks, and then we got a 1-year-old daughter, Taylor, and we've got a dog as well, Jake. So I tell people when I go to Chick-fil-A now, it costs me $60 to have dinner. But we are out of the game now. We're done.
Okay, I just want to make sure you understand how that works. Okay.
Right. Well, my truck, we pretty much have grown out of my truck now. My wife's got a Suburban, and we're busting out of the seams there. And you're liable to find French fries, and there's no telling what else under the car seat.
Awesome. That's awesome. Kind of last question, and we'll try to wrap it up for everybody. But we are the Alumni Association. You are a damn good dog. You graduated with a BBA in risk management insurance. What are you doing these days with the degree?
Well, I'm putting that degree to work. I'm a partner at a company called Sterling Seacrest Partners. We're actually the largest independently owned insurance brokerage firm in the state. A couple of my fellow teammates at Georgia, we work together as well. If y'all remember Bartley Miller, who played offensive line, Ryan Sewell, who's down in Savannah, Matt Stinchcomb, who most of y'all would know was an All-American at Georgia, and does a lot of the color for a lot of the SEC games as well. So, got some partners that a lot of UGA grads. So we certainly recruit heavy from the University of Georgia. The risk management school at Terry is always one of the best in the country. So whenever we know there's a Terry degree, it's a good education.
Yeah, I talked myself into jumping back in and doing an executive MBA program with Terry, and graduated in 2019. I never thought I'd go back, which took a while. The first day of class for us was the Sunday afternoon after Georgia Notre Dame in 2017. And I had Falcons Bears tickets, and I couldn't stay. And then the hurricane came, if you guys recall, and they turned class off. So I got to go downtown and drink water and watch the rest of the Falcons Bears game. If you believe half of that, then I'm doing pretty good. Well, David, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to hope to do this a little bit more throughout this year. We know a lot of our chapters around the world are not allowed to watch or are not allowed at least to do sanctioned events in person. So we're hoping we can, this will be a start of some good things to engage alumni as we go forward. UGA.edu/alumni is our website if you want to figure out ways to get engaged. And then we hope to do this again. One last thing as we close this out, we are doing throughout the football season, we're doing tailgate boxes through the university website at the bookstore, alumni UGA.edu/football, and you can get your tailgate package delivered to you and get some red and black going on that kitchen table or wherever it is you watch the games. So David, thanks again. Thanks our viewers for tuning in. We can continue this with Tennessee next week, and then that monster game on the 17th. So David, thanks again, man.
Brian, appreciate you, buddy. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs. Thanks everyone. Good night.